Hello and welcome. I am Exit Light and this is my channel. Before we get started, I'd like to ask if you wouldn't mind, would you go ahead and click that like button? You can always unclick it at the end of the video if you do not appreciate my work. But sometimes we do forget to like it, and it's a huge help for our channels. Also, at the end of the video, if you are not already subscribed and you feel as though you would like to be, please do so. Lakeview Sanitarium, April's story. April is nearly constantly moving, her hands twisting and turning, pointing and gesturing. She talks with her hands, they say. She is deep in a conversation, making plans, listening, and answering back. Occasionally, she'll become angry and adamant in her gesturing, speaking loudly of things she calls prophetic. During these outbursts, as the hospital calls them, she will be taken to her room, and on the way there she protests, yelling that she needs to be able to speak. She needs to be able to stop it. And as she fights against the men and women holding her down, she makes eye contact with each and every one, pleading with them to believe her. Just one of you. Please, you have no idea what's to come, and it's up to me to save us all, she'll say, as her words slow down, and her eyes glaze over, and her muscles become limp, and she's sedated so that she doesn't hear the voices in her head. It's a hot summer day in 1945, unseasonably warm, they said. April had been diagnosed with something called schizophrenia. She heard voices or a voice in her head, and even as we all do hear a voice in our own heads, hearing more than our own is considered an illness. The description of this illness goes back for thousands of years. The Greeks and Romans would drill holes into the skull of those that heard voices. The extra voices, other than the one we all hear, those were demons, and the hole was to release the demon from inside the skull. Throughout history, it's been thought that when we hear voices, it is demon possession. There are people to this day who still believe such things. Yet, it really depends on the situation. It's perfectly acceptable, normal, even one could say, to allow that a person can hear God speak to them, though they need to be standing in a church or a well-respected member of society to be allowed to speak of such things, not standing on a street corner, or they will be deemed ill. Those who call themselves communicators with the dead have long been believed to have a special gift for hearing voices of those long past or recently deceased. They are not deemed ill. At worst, they are deemed frauds, accused of trickery. At best, they command huge audiences, where they call out a name and begin to ask questions such as, is there someone with a letter J that could be speaking to you? And the audience weeps with the person contacted. They believe. April began hearing these voices at 14 years old. They told her of impending events, of her brother's passing, of her neighbor's barn fire. Eventually, she was not only labeled crazy but dangerous, and accused of committing these acts herself. She now lives her days, for the rest of her life, in Lakeview Sanitarium. Like I said, it was a hot August day. In fact, it was August 5th, 1945, as she battled with the voice, begging it to stop the impending doom, offering herself as a trade, begging for the voices to take the vision from her head. The shadows burned into the concrete. April was silent in her bed, medicated, deaf to the voices, being treated for her illness that day. The next day, August 6th, as an atomic bomb dropped down from the sky onto the Japanese city of Hiroshima, her pleas had been stamped out, her voice unable to beg for the innocent lives.